I had walked through the halls of Mandela Hall on the first day of Freshers. I'd been out enjoying myself the night before, not particularly DUP style, and I bumped into Peter Robinson, and he pointed at me and said, "You look like someone who likes the DUP." And I had a really interesting conversation with him. He talked about his vision for unionism and his vision for Northern Ireland. And I signed up that day to join the DUP at Queen's University. Nigel Dodds was then my Member of Parliament at the time, and he became my political father. Dianne Dodds, who I'm now served with in the Assembly, my political mum.
But do you think you'll see a border poll?
I don't. My brother was murdered by Loyalist terrorists, and I stand up and will condemn those people responsible for that. I'm very clear that paramilitaries have no role in Northern Ireland. They are a stain on our society. They hold back our society. And anyone engaged in criminality or paramilitarism should be dealt with by the police and should be in jail. Almost pity these people. What type of life do you have that you had to go out of your way to go out and murder someone who you didn't know just because you thought that they had a particular religion or a particular political view that you didn't agree with?
Phillip Brett, one of two DUP MLAs for Belfast North, joins me in the studio. Phillip, you're very welcome to the BelTel.
Thank you very much for having me, Ciarán.
I think you're the first DUP politician we've had, not former advisor or SPAD or anything. And this is new ground. We're trying to speak to as many politicians as we can to find out what they do, to find out what their views are, and to find out why they get into politics. I mean, why did you get into politics?
So sometimes a question I ask myself every day, Ciarán. But firstly, can I say I'm delighted to be here. I'm a big fan of your podcast. I don't come from a traditionally political background that a lot of politicians do. My family have no connections to political parties, but it's something that I became interested in as a child. I was brought up at my great auntie's house in Rathcoole, which is now in the heart of my constituency. She used to pick me up from school every day because my mum and dad were at work. And she was a big, big fan of Ian Paisley. When he came on the television, we were asked to listen to it. And she would often talk about politics. Probably subconsciously, I hadn't realised, but this maybe made an interest in it for me. But I got interested more in politics when I went to school. I went to BRA, which is in North Belfast, and just as I had joined the school, Martin McGuinness, Education Minister, had taken the decision to abolish the 11+. And our principal was heavily involved in the campaign to retain academic selection. And he didn't do it from a class perspective. He did it from a perspective that we were sitting in a school with people who, in North Belfast, you would never, ever meet. So some of my best friends were from Ardoyne and from New Lodge and from the Shankill. And no other part of North Belfast would these young people be educated together. Would they be able to learn together? And would they be able to become friends? And that ignited an interest in politics for me. Mervyn Storey and the DUP were to the fore of trying to retain parental choice and academic selection. So it kind of got me interested in politics. Went on to then do A-level politics at BRA, which was an experience. The most politically diverse class, I think, that has ever existed. So my politics class produced a Sinn Féin current councillor, current Ulster Unionist councillor, a candidate for the Workers' Party. Mr. Bailey wasn't too lucky, and when he ran for election, and people of all political persuasions and none, and that kind of allowed me the opportunity to tease out ideas that I was interested in, personalities that I was interested in, and that really, really sparked an interest in politics and I suppose an attraction to the DUP at that time.
You had that issue that sparked an issue, that was the transfer test, but you seem very much into politics for politics' sake, fascinated by the process, because sometimes you're talking to people who are involved in politics and they believe in an ideology and they're there to serve that ideology. Other people have, they would say, well, I believe in working for constituents, you know what I mean? I can set all the things aside and I'm working for this. Other people, especially in the Republic of Ireland, I find it's a career. Yeah. I'm a solicitor, an accountant, maybe even both. And it's a natural extension of being a local solicitor or an accountant to being a politician. We don't really get that much in the north. And other people, of course, in terms of our politics, they're in it to defend the union or they're in it to end the union. And that's their primary. But you do seem quite, politically political.
Yeah, so I was really, that sparked my interest, getting involved and getting interested in politics. But why I got into elected politics, I suppose, was, I'm an unashamed unionist. I believe that Northern Ireland and its best interests of everyone that lives here is served by being part of the United Kingdom. But my main interest was improving the community that I come from. I love North Belfast. I love Glengormley. I love my neighbours and I love my friends. And I don't think that all the time we were best served by our political masters. And rather than sitting there complaining about politicians that many of your listeners may do, I thought, well, if I think I can do a better job than these people, well, why don't I get involved and see what I can do to improve my community? And I was given huge opportunities when I joined the DUP at university. And I just thought I can give back to the community in which I was brought up in, which continued to live in, where my constituents know where I live, where I've known them for many years. I went to school with them. My family worked with them. They stood with our family in very, very difficult times. And I wake up every day thinking that this is the best job in the world, that I have a privilege, I have a mandate to speak for these people and try and use my platform to improve the lives of everyone that I'm honoured to represent.
Why the DUP?
Suppose it was an initial interest, first of all, through my great aunt who wanted me to listen to Dr. Paisley every time he came on television. But I am, as I said earlier, an unashamed unionist, and I believe that the DUP is the best vehicle to keep and protect Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom. Peter Robinson was the party leader when I was at university. I had walked through the halls of Mandela Hall on the first day of Freshers. I'd been out enjoying myself the night before, not particularly DUP style, and I bumped into Peter Robinson, and he pointed at me and said, "You look like someone who likes the DUP." And I had a really interesting conversation with him. He talked about his vision for unionism and his vision for Northern Ireland. And I signed up that day to join the DUP at Queen's University. And it was his leadership and his view of how we can move Northern Ireland and society forward that got me interested in politics. Nigel Dodds was then my Member of Parliament at the time. And when I left university, I was given a massive opportunity to come work for him. And he became my political father, Dianne Dodds, who I'm now serve with in the Assembly, my political mum. And they just gave me massive opportunities within the party. I got co-opted on the Antrim and Newtownabbey Council in 2013 for Glengormley, where I live, grew up in, where I knew people. Ran for election the year after that and was returned then in 2014 and 2019. So that's why I got involved in the DUP.
Political mother and father. That's quite a statement. That's quite a statement on in anybody's terms. That's it's a familial relationship. There's great affection. There's great respect. And obviously Nigel Dodds has had a great influence on you. I don't want to speak. Please do not think what I'm going to say is pejorative, but you don't come across the Paisleyite despite your great aunt's efforts.
Yeah. No, well, listen, there's one qualification to join the DUP, which I think a lot of people forget about. Page 1, Rule 1 of the DUP, that you support Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, no more or no less. And do I do that? 100%. I lost my dad when I was quite young, and Nigel became a really influential figure. A lot of politicians appear on media or television as a very different person than they are in reality.
Well, a lot of them come across very angry.
Yeah, and that they don't have a particular relationship with their constituents or people, or they're not relatable, or they're not normal, just like all of us, that they don't get up every day, go to work to try to do their best. They don't love sport, they don't have interests, they don't have family pressures, they don't have all of these things. And the Nigel Dodds that I know and continue to know is very different from the one that was produced on television.
I don't know if you're helping Nigel's reputation or absolutely ruining it, because he does have this reputation, as you say, as a straight talking, quite gruff man.
He comes across as a formidable operator. He represented North Belfast in Parliament. North Belfast, one of the most politically diverse and difficult constituencies to represent. He was the leader of the party at Westminster during the Confidence and Supply Agreement, which put a huge media focus upon him. So he had huge pressures. He was always straight talking and took particular political views. But that didn't always come across in the Nigel Dodds that I knew, that, on a Sunday when Manchester United beat Everton, and I would text him to say, "Looking forward to see you tomorrow, boss." As a big Everton fan, he didn't take that well. But
that might have happened quite regularly.
Yeah, exactly. But no, him and Dianne wasn't just a relationship that, a boss and an employee. It was a family almost type relationship, and that's what really attracted me to the party. We're not just a political party and a bunch of people who have similar ideas about the future of Northern Ireland. We genuinely are a family party, and people get on very, very well. And I continue to be friends with both Nigel and Dianne, and look forward to them taking me out for Christmas dinner on Tuesday. It's their turn to pay this year.
And what is this vision?
So my vision for Northern Ireland is one of prosperity. So we've got to the stage where we have delivered peace through the efforts of politicians from all sides of Northern Ireland, but we haven't quite got that prosperity piece yet. I look at the constituency that I'm from and represent in North Belfast, and why is it that the life expectancy of the people that I represent is 15 years less than the people who live in South Belfast? The problems that the people of Tigers Bay face are no different from the problems that the people of the New Lodge face. They're just separated by a wall, but they haven't had the economic prosperity or dividends from a peace process that other parts haven't. I don't think we've seen the investment in parts of Northern Ireland where other places have benefited from it. And my view for unionism is to make a Northern Ireland that works for everyone.
But all political parties can say that.
Sure.
But with all due respect, you're not in opposition.
No, we're not in opposition. I'm a humble backbench MLA, but I serve all constituents in North Belfast.
No, I get that, but I think the point is, because I hear this quite a bit.
Yeah, of course.
Hear this quite a bit, and I mean, sometimes you hear, and we hear this in Dublin.
Yeah.
Fine Gael politicians will be, making points, and they almost try and make you forget they've been in power for 14 years, just to take it out of Northern Ireland for a second. And the point is that the DUP have been part of the power sharing executive for a very, very long time. And indeed, the DUP have been there are 2 DUP MLAs for North Belfast. So I mean, whose fault is it?
And listen, I blame, and I'll take my blame of this as well. For a long time, the focus in North Belfast was about managing difficulties that arose. So be that about parading disputes, be that about torrents, be that about intimidation of communities, particularly the Unionist community who were pushed out of certain areas of North Belfast. The focus in North Belfast had been about managing the difficulties and trying to overcome them. And we have got to a much better space in North Belfast now, where community relations are very good. And the focus that I am pushing now is to try and invest in communities, to empower them, to uplift them, that their focus should not be on what divides people in North Belfast, but what unites them. And that's about improving the housing availability, because anyone in North Belfast who needs a house deserves a house. It's about improving life opportunities. Whatever your long-term political aspirations for this part of the world is, you want your family to have the best possible education that they can have. You want to have the best possible job opportunities that you can have. And I see North Belfast turning a corner in that, but there's still a lot more to do.
There's 2 questions coming out of what you just said.
Yeah.
Very interesting. But I think I do have to point out, you talked about the intimidation of unionist communities. Obviously, some people will say that happens the other way as well. But there's an element that many people would argue, and indeed, Stormont argues, because we see it in posters on the walls, literally, that there's intimidation going on in unionist communities. There's drug dealing, there's rackets, there's abusive control, and that comes from Loyalist paramilitaries.
It does, listen, and I can speak with great authority in terms of the impact of Loyalist terrorists in Northern Ireland. My brother was murdered by Loyalist terrorists, and I stand up and will condemn those people responsible for that. I'm very clear that paramilitaries have no role in Northern Ireland. They are a stain on our society. They hold back our society. And anyone engaged in criminality or paramilitarism should be dealt with by the police and should be in jail. We get this view peddled by elements of our political opponents and the media that we don't call these people out. I don't care what people's long-term political aspirations are. If you claim to be a unionist, going out and intimidating your own community is not what a unionist does. Murdering your fellow unionist is not what a unionist does. Those people who claim to be unionists and who claim to stand up for the UK, who go out and deal drugs, who intimidate people, or who murder their neighbours are a disgrace and should be in prison. I'm very happy to say that. But I call that out on all sides. And I say that that was wrong before 1998 and is wrong now. Some other parties will not call that out at all times.
You know, the listener might say, is expecting me to ask further questions on your brother's death.
Yeah.
I have read interviews you've done before, and you've obviously didn't want it to be defined by that.
Yeah.
And I would like to return to that subject, if you don't mind, at the end. I just don't want to make the interview all about it. There's something you said there, and I think it's very, very significant, because I've had former unionist politicians, advisors, and representatives of the community. I mean, and there's us, especially in North and West Belfast, there's this issue around education in unionist areas. And I've sort of challenged people. I remember challenging John Kyle to say, you know, is this not a stereotype? You know what I mean? Is this not? And everybody says, no. This is a real problem. But, you know, Stranmillis College educate damn good teachers, and they go into, you know, the Shankill and North Belfast, and there's good headmasters and people and headmistresses, and they have this, well, they should have the same buildings as everybody else. I know that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, of course.
So I just wonder, you know, is that problem exaggerated, or is this a real problem? And if it is a real problem, and everybody says it's a real problem, I mean, is it almost a psychological problem?
So educational attainment in North Belfast is a major issue. We just had a report published 2 days ago about the number of constituencies, people that go to university. I was the first person in my family to go to a grammar school. I was the first person in my family to go to university, and that's somewhat typical of a North Belfast background, that a lot of people had a lot of jobs in settled industries that may not have required particular academic achievements, and young people then thought that and became, I suppose, reliant on the fact that there was always going to be jobs and employment for them then. I have started to see a change in that, that education is the key to all of these things. It's the key to ensuring a better life for you and a better life for your family. And I visit schools, particularly primary schools, on a regular basis, just to see that the work that they're doing and trying to secure that investment. But I think inner city constituencies in particular have difficulties that they deal with that no other part of Northern Ireland deals with. I'm going to a school after this that's on the Peace Line on the Limestone Road, and the issues that those young people face is, you know, the control of paramilitaries in their community, the fact that their mother or father may have to lend money from certain people to try and afford Christmas, which is coming up in 2 weeks' time, that issues around cultural expression, flags, bonfires, peace walls, etc. You know, those are impacts that resonate for this young person, and the focus when they get home from school might not be on doing their homework or reading their book when they go to sleep. It might be about the challenges that their families face. So that's why I've worked so hard to try and make sure that the primary schools are the safe haven that they need to be, that we've seen increased investment in those schools, that those young people realise that education is the key to them ensuring that they have a better life for both them and their family. And it's about showing people, leading by example, and going out and saying, listen, I come from the same background as you do, and this is what I can achieve. Point to other people from North Belfast, Carl Frampton, Mr. Braniff, everyone who's, you know, come from North Belfast, examples, and trying to say to them, you can achieve anything that you want. And trying to give these young people hope that, you know, the world is their oyster. So educational attainment is something that we need to continue to try and push.
Your focus on North Belfast seems near complete. So my next question, I suppose I've written it down. I'm gonna ask it anyway, but I do realise it perhaps clashes with the direction of conversation. I mean, what are the greatest challenges that Northern Ireland faces?
So that is a big change. The greatest change Northern Ireland that we focus on is that prosperity issue. Thankfully, Northern Ireland continues to witness economic growth. I'll not come back to North Belfast too quickly, but it's about ensuring that all corners of Northern Ireland benefit from that economic prosperity. It's about ensuring that people get jobs and not just as the cleaner. Correct. And there's nothing wrong with cleaning the office. There's certainly not. But you know, it's about making sure that those that opportunities are as available to everyone. As available as everyone. And I have this argument in a chair of the Economy Committee, and my colleagues from all political parties who represent Foyle sit on that committee, and they always argue to say Belfast gets everything, you get all the jobs. And I say, yeah, the jobs may be based in Belfast, but some of the people that I represent in Belfast, the factories and the shiny office blocks like the one we're in today may overlook the homes that they live in, but there's not too many of them coming in to work in those great new offices that are being built in certain parts of the city. So it's about ensuring that opportunity is genuinely open to everyone right across Belfast and right across Northern Ireland. And that is what I push in my role as the chair of the Economy Committee, that everyone needs to have the access to this new prosperity and these new opportunities that Northern Ireland continues to attract.
Stormont, you're on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, I suppose why we asked to speak to you is your profile has been high, and I think it's rising. Stormont, there's a lot of commentary around Stormont. A lot of it's negative. Some of it may be headline grabbing, of course.
Sure.
Does it work?
I believe it does work. I believe that Northern Ireland is best served by a local assembly and by local ministers who make decisions in the best interests of all the people here in Northern Ireland. Is it perfect? No, but we're a unique part of the world. We have a situation where in recent polls, 60% of people support Northern Ireland staying within the United Kingdom, 40% of people support the breakup of the United Kingdom here in Northern Ireland. So there's that balance, but my focus is on trying to make Northern Ireland work. I think that serves everyone's interest, both now in the current, but also as a unionist in the long term, to try and continue.
So you would dismiss those unionists, perhaps some of them on the fringe, perhaps some of them in the TUV,
Sure,
who just, want rid of this.
And they're perfectly entitled to hold that view, but when I asked them the next question, this is when they shut down. So they want to abolish Stormont and hand all the powers and the future of Northern Ireland over to Keir Starmer and to the Labour Party. But they then spend the entirety of the rest of their issues and discussions lambasting that very government. They rightly highlight, just like we do, the impact of the Windsor Framework here in Northern Ireland, but that's been implemented and further deepened by this UK Labour government. But they want to hand even more power to them. Stormont is not perfect, but some of the decisions that we can make and the mitigations that we can put in place are far superior to what could be the case if we had simply been represented at Westminster. So that's a battle that I continually try to raise with the people that I represent and others, that Stormont is not perfect. I'm going to not sit here and tell people that everything is perfect in Stormont, but in my view, it is the best thing for Northern Ireland to have local ministers and local MLAs making decisions about the future of this place.
I have to point out as well, I suppose, if not in the nationalist parties, but many nationalist commentators maintain a very negative view of Stormont,
Sure.
And it's a running theme. So, I just wonder then, there's sort of the suggestion that, if Stormont can be got rid of, then, they won't be coming back. And I think some commentators clearly desire that. I just wonder, who needs it more, the 60% or the 40%?
I think everyone needs the Assembly, in my view. I don't think decisions taken by the Assembly or Executive are based solely on the constitutional position of Northern Ireland. I look at decisions that have been agreed by the Assembly and by the Executive, and it's in everyone's interest. Yes, I'll continue to push policies that strengthen Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, but issues around childcare and support for those across Northern Ireland who see their costs soaring, £50 million spent by the Executive on that would not happen if we didn't have a Stormont delivering those localised decisions. Issues in the Department for Communities around football and other things that I'm a big follower of would not happen. So those decisions are based on the long-term interests of everyone who lives here. But as I say, Stormont is not perfect. But if you go to any other country in the world and you say to them, are your political institutions perfect? I don't think you'll get many people saying yes.
No, but I would say that particularly in Scandinavia, perhaps even closer to home in Scotland and other places, there are jurisdictions where there perhaps is a stronger social contract.
Yeah.
And that social contract allows those governments to tax their people more because the people have faith that this money will come back in terms of roads, services, etc. I'm not sure. I mean, it's been pointed out in this podcast that Stormont, in actual fact, could be a much more powerful institution than it is. I mean, almost everything is devolved. And aside from income tax, Stormont could raise money. And if there was more faith in Stormont and people believed in Stormont and people had more faith in politicians and there was a greater social contract, then Stormont could actually raise the money needed to fix the roads. I mean, I have to come through the York Street interchange to get here. That's been planned since the 1960s.
Yep.
We can't build new houses because we have problems with water. Lough Neagh has been described as a sewer. Now, obviously, there are issues, there are environmental issues, there are a whole range of issues which need sorted, but money would be a great help to sort an awful lot of things. But for a government to spend, they need to get the money, and they get the money by taxation or some other, every government's tax and spend, and I just wonder if the people have more faith in Stormont, if they would be saying, well, there's my money, spend it as you wish.
So money is not always everything, Ciarán. We have money for certain projects. So the A5, money sitting secured for that. It hasn't been stopped as a result of a lack of funding or a lack of money. It's been stopped as an inability for the Department for Infrastructure to properly put through a planning application, struck down in the courts. Other state major infrastructure projects, Casement Park, which is regularly discussed by the Assembly and our political opponents as us holding back. There's the money there to build Casement Park. The money's been there since 2011, but residential objections, planning objections and other things have slowed that down. So
you have no ideological objection to Casement Park being finished?
No, it's built or started. No, in 2011 we signed up to a fair and equitable agreement that would see Ravenhill National Football Stadium at Windsor Park and Casement Park delivered. We've said on numerous occasions we stand over the agreement that was made then. The delay in Casement Park being built is not as a result of the DUP. I often have this discussion in the Assembly. There are not too many members of the DUP on the Andersonstown Road who stood outside Casement Park and protested its redevelopment. There wasn't too many members of the DUP who live in the Andersonstown Road who took Mark Durkin to court and made sure that he lost as a result of approving that planning application. So there are failings by many individuals on this issue, but I'm not quite sure you could point to the DUP as one of those who have held up Casement Park. So
the criticism you get over Casement Park, in your view, is not fair, it's not accurate.
Correct.
Okay. I have a question here. I didn't come up with this, but I'm going to ask you, because you've talked about infrastructure, and this is really nitty-gritty. This is nitty-gritty. Hill Street Blues. Hill Street Blues. Well, I mean, yes. So I have a note here that says, ask him about Hill Street.
Yes.
It's been suggested that it's a metaphor for the failure of Stormont. That's not my view.
Yes,
I have to stress that. But I was on it and I recently, and I did watch the cars, just ignored. Okay. And I just wonder, what was the point in the signs where the bollard going up? Now, you're not the infrastructure minister, but it could be said that it's such a small thing. It's just a simple thing, and this place is a tourist trap. It's an economic, and it's a great party place, and you shouldn't be driving through it.
And it's in North Belfast.
What? Okay.
Listen, Hill Street's something that I've been involved in since I got elected. We had the nonsense that the infrastructure minister said as a result of British government austerity she couldn't afford £5,000 to pedestrianise the street. Since signs have gone up. I was down there last Friday when the pedestrianisation was introduced with the Cathedral Quarter bid and the police. So I do think there needs to be better signage at that, but I do want to acknowledge the fact and not always criticise my political opponents that, in fairness, yes, it's been delayed. Yes, the excuses were nonsense. But in fairness to Liz Kimmins, it's now there. It's only 6 months. I want to see it introduced fully. The police were down again there yesterday. So it is an educational piece about trying to ensure that people don't drive down there. The amount of traffic has massively reduced. So I do think in the long term we will get there, but teething problems. But it's a good news story. Improvements to be made, but it's a good start.
And I just should point out that if Liz Kimmins wants to come on the podcast and make her points, she's very, very welcome. A more philosophical question, if you don't mind. Do you think nationalists have due regard for unionists?
I think some certainly do. a lot of my friends and a lot of members of my family come from a non-unionist background and are proudly nationalists, and I respect their right to hold that position because they respect my right to hold the views that I do too. I think there's certain political representatives who have no interest or have no regard for unionist tradition here in Northern Ireland. I'm sure they would make the counter argument that there are certain unionist politicians who don't have that.
So you're, because my next question was, do you think unionists have due regard for nationalists?
Yeah.
But I can clearly see your tactic here. You're going to individualise this.
Yes, well, I certainly do. I'm here to speak for myself. I have a lot of respect for people who may have different long-term political aspirations for this place that we all call home. I will defend their right to hold that, but I will call them out for the views that I think are incorrect, and I'll not give up on trying to convert them to the cause of unionism. But I think here in Northern Ireland, if we are to continue to have a shared future and a better future, is that we need to respect the fact that Northern Ireland is the only part of the world where you can be British, you can be Irish, you can be Northern Irish, you can be none, or you can be all. And if we abolish this place that some want to do, that ends tomorrow. So people can have their own identity, they can have their own long-term aspirations, they can have their own views of the past and of the future. But you need to respect that, because if you're just going to hold people's political views, which many people hold very, very dear to them, within utter contempt, how are you going to sell Northern Ireland as a place that they can be at home and be respected?
Yeah, I just wonder. There's no doubt about that. That's a point that's been made. But when we hold, to a large extent, and I understand you have a more complicated family background, but for the vast majority of time, these are questions of ancestry, and these are questions of accident of birth, as John Hume would say, and especially in the countryside. These townland boundaries and where these families lived, this is because of things that happened 400 years ago.
Yes,
and they haven't changed. And sometimes I have to be somewhat cynical, and I wonder, well, if those people haven't been assimilated to Irishness in the last 400 years, they're probably not going to be in the next 400 years. And at the same other stage, if the other people have not been made British in the last 400 years, it's probably not going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years either.
No, but what you have seen is an exponential growth in those people who identify themselves as Northern Irish and as a unique place here as a part of the United Kingdom, that they have that ability to be both, to be either or to be none here in Northern Ireland. 1998, the vote level for those who want to break up the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland to leave the UK has not increased, and we're now in 2025, about to join 2026. We've had the tumultuous issue of Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom leaving the European Union, and yet that level of support for political parties who want to abolish Northern Ireland has not increased. What has increased is those who identify as Northern Irish, and this new unique centre ground that they don't have a long-term focus on the constitutional question. They have a long-term focus on making Northern Ireland work, and that's where I'm trying to pitch the DUP at, that we want to see Northern Ireland work for everyone.
That's an interesting line. It almost seems like I said I made the comparison to sharks feeding on a whale's carcass recently, and I thought it was going too far, and other people said, no, I like it. And that was in terms of everybody having a little bite at the Alliance Party. And that's what I think you've just had. You've had a nibble there.
Well, they would often accuse me of having a nibble at them. But, people get involved in politics because they believe in something, is my view. I struggle to understand what the Alliance Party now believe in. You look at the Assembly and the Belfast City Council in particular, because that's where the media focus is, and their voting record speaks for itself in terms of where they go. We've seen them being forced to make U-turns on certain issues. So the flying of the Palestinian flag at Belfast City Council, they initially voted for it. Then the centre ground, middle ground became utterly appalled at the decision that they made, because in Belfast, you can't get your bin emptied. The city centre can be described as a nightmare at times, and the city council can't deliver basic services. So they then U-turned on their position and voted against it. So I don't understand what the Alliance Party now stand for anymore. They used to be the people who tried to find a way through particularly difficult issues, but more and more now they seem to side with nationalist parties at the Assembly and in Belfast City Council. You've seen in your polls that you run in the your paper, that their vote continues to plummet, that Naomi Long has gone from the most popular to the least popular political leader in Northern Ireland. So I think they're having an identity crisis because they're being pushed by both Unionists and Nationalists.
Well, we have a long-term bid in with the Alliance Party for Naomi Long or anyone else from the Alliance Party to come in. Although I would have to point out, when everybody talks about the middle ground and the Northern Irish identity, I mean, if you look at some of the directions that the Alliance Party has taken, in your view, and my analysis also, perhaps that Northern Irish identity may not be as dependable as people think in terms of the union. So, I mean, it's all to play for, and they're all to be attracted. You have a high profile. Have you high ambitions?
So I got involved in politics because I wanted to give back to the community. I've been given massive opportunities. So as I say, I ran for my first election at 21 and was elected to Antrim and Newtownabbey Council on 2 occasions. I was DUP group leader on the council of the largest party. But it was almost a coincidence or a fate that I got to run for the Assembly. Paula Bradley decided late on in 2022, about 4 or 5 weeks out from the Assembly election, that due to her mum being unwell, thank you very much, that she wasn't going to run. So I had 5 weeks' notice that I was going to run for the Assembly, which is probably a good thing because then you didn't have time to worry about the consequences or what I was going to do. But then since the Assembly's come back, I've been made chairman of the Economy Committee, only one of 3 DUP chairmen at the Assembly. So I've been given massive opportunities by this party. And I think it defies the logic that people who might not be from traditional DUP backgrounds can't thrive in the party. So I've been given massive opportunities by the party. My ambition was at some stage to get to the Assembly. I'm already there.
Philip, I'm sure... I have to talk about this, but I'm sure the pain never goes away, really. But your brother Gavin was murdered in Glengormley on the 29th of July 2001. That's well after the Good Friday Agreement. No one has ever been caught for this, but I mean, it was the South East UDA, Antrim UDA. I mean, that had a devastating effect on your father, your mother, yourself, and your family. I mean, that's... In terms of, I mean, the question must be very, I mean, is it, how much did it affect? You're only 9.
Yeah, I was only 9, so P6. I was P6. We lived in the Hightown Road, quiet, secluded part of North Belfast. I think my mum and dad picked that because they came from inner city. So my dad's I was from Andersonstown in West Belfast, my mum from Ardoyne in North Belfast. They had grown up in the inner city and they probably didn't want that for their children. So we moved to the outskirts of Glengormley. Great childhood, great upbringing. People from all backgrounds and traditions lived around there. And just one night during the summer in 2001, St Enda's with GA Club, which was the sort of local heart of our community where people used to spend their time, because it was quite a rural setting then. Now there's thousands of houses up there, but there were only maybe 100 houses there at the time. And Gavin and his friends were on the Hightown Road, and Loyalist terrorists, as a claimed repercussion for some other incident that took place, set out to go out and murder innocent people that night. They thought they were going to try and murder an innocent Catholic, but obviously that wasn't the case. And they claimed that was somehow serving the cause of Ulster by going out and murdering innocent people. I suppose when you're that age, you're not really... It's hard to comprehend those type of things. But
I mean, how can you comprehend something which is essentially pointless?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's what makes it so worse.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I suppose the worst of it was that my dad, paramedic, had served all communities across Northern Ireland without fear or favour. He had been at some of the worst incidents of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and he had saved so many lives, and he was one of the first people at the scene when Gavin was killed. And I think for him it was the most devastating thing that he had saved the lives of so many people, but the one life that he ultimately wanted to save, that of his son, he wasn't able to do. So he then became a shell of himself, and then 5 years later he ultimately passed away as well.
Your mother has pleaded with people, to turn over his killers. They haven't been. I just wondered, you work with people on the ground in all communities.
Sure.
You must I don't know if you've ever been in, I don't know if you know who murdered your brother. I don't know. Sometimes people say, I think I do.
Yeah.
You must have come in close quarters with those people.
I would imagine so. You don't operate in North Belfast in politics without coming across individuals who have a very, very checkered past. But my view on this is that, and I think when I did one interview on it before, I almost pity these people. You know, what type of life do you have that you had to go out of your way to go out and murder someone who you didn't know just because you thought that they had a particular religion or a particular political view that you didn't agree with? You must have been brought up in such a horrible environment or have such a low opinion of yourself or your views that you had to then take it into your hands to try and do that. We've never been told by the police who they are or aren't. We had a HIT report, but again, they weren't able to locate any.
Would you like to see someone in court for this?
I would.
Okay.
And that's why I was so, not for me though, because for my mum, she's managed to stand through all of this. And that's why the whole issue around legacy was something I was particularly interested in, because, you know, they wanted to give an amnesty to those who, even after the Belfast Agreement, went out of their way to murder people, believe that they should still be entitled to some form of amnesty. My view is that if you engaged in murder before or after 1998, you should remain in prison for the rest of your life. But I would love to see for my mum, who, you know, within the space of 5 years, lost her son, lost her husband, lost her mother, and then was left to bring up my sister and I. So I'd love long term to see justice for her.
This is a question you've asked before.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, I'm slightly uncomfortable asking it, but are you comfortable with the term stakeholders?
In terms of
Loyalist paramilitaries and the DUP?
So, no, anyone who's, my view on this is clear. Anyone who's engaged in criminal activity, illegality, member of a prescribed organisation should be in prison. There's no place for that. Should those who have a past, who are committed to peaceful means, who may have been in prison, were released under the terms of the Belfast Agreement, which we as a party oppose, does that mean that they can't have a role in the future? Absolutely not. But if they want to go back to the days of murdering their neighbours, if they want to go back to the days of extorting people, if they want to go back to the days of holding the unionist community to ransom, my view is they should be in jail. They shouldn't be out in Northern Ireland trying to make an impact, dictating to politicians or dictating to anyone what policy should be.
Philip, final question.
Yes.
You know, you've been discussing the unions. You're a unions politician.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think you'll see a border poll?
I don't. I wouldn't.
How will you stop that? I mean, there seems to be a lot of momentum.
So there seems to be a lot of talking by certain individuals, the same individuals who almost publish the same article in certain newspapers every week to say that the end is now. I just seen a opinion piece posted 2 days ago, opinion poll by the University of Liverpool, which shows that the support for the breakup of the United Kingdom here in Northern Ireland has fallen once again. We had the Secretary of State on a particular...
So why wouldn't you want a border poll then?
So I'll come to that. I seen a Secretary of State in a particular interview say that he believes wholeheartedly that it's not even an issue that he even wants to discuss or look at, because he doesn't believe the condition has been met or ever will be met during his tenure of Secretary of State. I'm not opposed to a border poll on the fact that I think we'd lose. I know we would win. I'm opposed to a border poll because of the destabilising impact that it would have. Here in Northern Ireland, we have many challenges. The executive has many challenges, and the focus, I believe, of all political parties should be on dealing with the here and now, dealing with the issues that affect every single person in every single community right across Northern Ireland, and to get involved in divisive politics, which is going to result in one clear outcome, which is Northern Ireland remaining part of the UK, wastes energy, wastes time, and wastes funding. Let's get on with making Northern Ireland work, and that's what I'm committed to doing.
That's a clear answer. People will disagree, but we'll have to leave it there. Phillip Brett, DUP MLA for North Belfast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ciarán.